Thank you, Agni, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our cafe this month, which is all about menopause and stress management. Since April is the Stress Awareness Month, so we've dedicated this hour to that. I'll just go through quickly on some definitions just to set the scene about both menopause and mental health. I'll take you through some symptoms related to stress and mental health during menopause. And I will take a deeper look at how sort of the science behind what happens to our mental health at menopause. So what is the relationship between hormones, the female hormones, and neurotransmitters? These are chemicals that are in charge of our mood, learning, sort of positivity, and also looking closer at the two hormones, estrogen and progesterone, which are the main female hormones that diminish with menopause. I will also look at stress, of course, and the pathophysiology of stress, the stress hormone, cortisol, how that interferes with our hormones. And of course, all important, how we can help ourselves, because there's so many things we can do to improve and to sort of soften the blow of menopause on our stress and mental health. So some definitions: menopause, as you may know, is the absence of menstrual cycles for 12 consecutive months. And of course, the subsequent absence of female sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. We now put as much emphasis on testosterone as we do on estrogen and progesterone, because we have learned how important it is in various functions in the female body, including our cognition and mood. Perimenopause is when a woman still has regular or irregular cycles, but she's starting to experience symptoms related to fluctuations in hormone levels. And the WHO definition of mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to her community. Now, having said that, now the symptoms of mental health that we can experience at menopause, I've sort of tried to divide them into groups. So one is the mood swings and feeling emotional. That actually comes about quite early on in perimenopause, because one of the main hormones that puts us in charge of our mood, progesterone, which is released when we ovulate, starts to diminish at perimenopause, and that's because we start having more and more anovulatory cycles. So menstrual cycles that do not result in an ovulation. So just because you're having a menstrual cycle doesn't mean that you're ovulating. And if you're not ovulating, you're not releasing any progesterone, and therefore you begin to feel this emotional swing. Feeling increasingly anxious, including panic attacks. So the anxiety can be both mental and very physical. So with palpitations, sweaty palms, waking up in a panic in the middle of the night, which is very disturbing and adds to the perimenopause. Feeling down, tearful for no apparent reason, so no particular reason for feeling very sensitive on things. And on the other hand, the temper, losing temper, feeling very angry, irritable. These can start as worsening of pre-existing mental health problems. So, somebody who's been having treatment for long-term clinical anxiety or clinical depression, but quite sort of controlled throughout life, when they reach perimenopause, and we will of course be looking at the function of hormones, estrogen, progesterone, in making sure that your mental health is all kept at bay. So when you don't have the control from that is offered by the female hormones, then your usual control can go out of the window, and they start feeling sort of increasing anxiety or low mood. But also in women who've never experienced clinical anxiety or depression, with no real diagnosis of mental health, and they're usually positive and happy individuals, personalities, and then they're hit with this quite early on, and it may be very difficult to diagnose it because it comes about on the background of a supposedly normal and regular cycles. Now, this, you may have seen this in previous talks that I've given, but I think it's really important to have a look at it and remind ourselves what happens to the hormones as we transition through perimenopause and menopause. So this is looking at the two main female hormones. The purple is estrogen, the green is progesterone, and it takes us through the fluctuations that we can anticipate throughout a life cycle. So this is at puberty when there is a fluctuation in estrogen, but there's a balance. As you can see, the purple estrogen, the green progesterone, there's a balance between them. And that balance is kept throughout the premenopausal state here, because the woman still is ovulating. And then when they reach the perimenopause, you see the fluctuations in estrogen levels. So sometimes it's very high, sometimes very low, but all along a drop in progesterone. So the balance of these two hormones diminishes. And at that point, you see the emergence of symptoms, that red line. And I've listed these, some of the symptoms, but of course, there are many more. But mental health changes during menopause and perimenopause are extremely common. And often we miss them, where they're not discussed. The woman doesn't, they feel sort of, maybe this is because I've got increasing whatever going on in my life. That's why I can't sleep. That's why I feel a bit sad. So they don't seek help early enough. And when they do, it's not picked up that it could be related to this. And about 50% of perimenopausal women are treated with antidepressants. It's quite common for women, especially if they go to see a non-specialist, they are handed out antidepressant if they feel that their hormones are their regular cycles, but they're feeling sad or depressed. And it offers some relief, of course, antidepressants, but it doesn't really offer any overall quality of life improvement, which is a shame, really. That what we need to be looking at and adjusting is the hormones. It's really important also to note that we do age differently. To women and men age differently. So the sudden and the earlier onset of drop in hormone levels are not experienced as at that age and so suddenly in men. And also our brain ages differently to men, because the brain and the ovaries are parts of a system called the neuroendocrine system. I will touch on it again when we talk about how neurotransmitters and hormones are related. So our health of our ovaries, function of our ovaries, how much hormones we produce, has a direct impact on our brain function, and vice versa, of course. Midlife transition, as all of us who've experienced it know, that is a very stressful time. It can be very stressful, and we respond to it very differently because we are faced with a wide range of new experiences. We are faced with a wide range of emerging symptoms that I'll touch on some of them in the next slide. Also, the actual physical and emotional changes of aging. Some people struggle more than others when they're faced with this. Demands of growing children for those who have children, and of course, elderly parents or relatives that we feel responsible for. So this time of life often coincides with increasing professional, family, and social responsibilities. And to balance this, it's difficult, and it can really cause stress. Some of these symptoms that can be very troubling and difficult to control are the hot flushes and night sweats, insomnia, which can be difficulty in falling asleep or waking up multiple times in the night. Managing these symptoms can cause stress, and it can cause a difficulty with mental health equilibrium that we were experiencing before, because they can be very severe, very often in the day, can interfere with our work, our life, and it just becomes a struggle, and it suddenly increases the stress hormone or cortisol. Also declining in mental agility and memory that can arise from a low testosterone level, as well as estrogen, and the very common urogynecological symptoms. About 80% of menopausal women experience some form of urogyne symptoms. These are either poor bladder control, recurrent cystitis, urinary tract infection, dryness, irritation in the pelvic area, and these can also cause rising stress. So we talked about the indirect way, so coping with everything that is going on and whatever that we're faced with in midlife, and including the symptoms can cause stress, but also what we may not know is that there's an actual direct impact of menopause with what goes on in our brain, with our neurotransmitters and cortisol level. So on this slide, I've tried to explain a little bit of science behind it. So this diagram that you see on the right-hand side is a nerve ending where neurotransmitters, which are basically molecules that act as chemical signals, and they facilitate communication between nerve cells or between nerve cell and other cells in the body. So they're really important chemicals that are released at nerve endings, and then they travel, they sit on receptors on other cells, and they signal, it signals basically. If you release serotonin, it tells you to be happy and positive. If it's dopamine, it keeps you motivated. And then there's another system that is also good for memory and learning new skills. So estrogen has a direct impact on every single stage of this. So on the synthesis, where it's made, these neurotransmitters, then it's released, it sort of potentiates the receptor that accepts it, that it binds to, and it stops it from breaking down. So at this very tiny cellular level, estrogen has multiple important functions, that when it's the ovaries are releasing enough of it, we feel happy, because you get enough of these important neurotransmitters. And when we are going through a diminishing estrogen or complete end of estrogen, we can feel that there's a reduction in the neurotransmitters that can help us feel positive and happy. And how much anyone responds to this, of course, is very different. Some people feel extremely sad, they struggle to cope with it, and others can cope with lifestyle modifications. Estrogen also has another very important role in our brain, because it's an energy producer. It helps to mop up the sugar from our food, and it takes it to inside the cell so that the cell can produce energy. And when the estrogen level drops, it's about 30% drop in our energy production in the brain. So that's when we feel foggy and we feel unclear. It's difficult to make decisions. And we lose confidence a bit, actually. Progesterone, so that's the hormone that is released when we ovulate, is also really important in this game, and it's a neuroactive. So, it has a direct impact on our brain. This one, what it does, it enhances GABA receptors. GABA is also a neurotransmitter, but it has an inhibitory effect. So it calms the system down. So it makes you feel calm, collected, okay, not anxious. And when progesterone is missing, that's when sort of you feel anxious, stressed, or fear of even, like, I've had women tell me that they previously were really calm drivers, and suddenly they're very fearful. They can't actually drive anymore, or they just fear to, they dislike being in very crowded areas. They can't get into the public transport in very high traffic time. And this diagram here, this chart, is a very simple representation of what goes on in our hormone cascade. It is much more complicated than this, but this is a really nice way to demonstrate my message, basically, and to give you an idea of this cortisol steal. Because for those of you who I've had the pleasure of meeting in a consultation, you know that I often talk about cortisol, the importance of it when we come to manage our hormone levels and to reach optimal hormone health. Cortisol is our stress hormone, and this cortisol still basically refers to a biochemical process when chronic stress diverts pregnenolone, which is the mother hormone that can be sort of translated into many different hormones, but it steals it from it. So because the cortisol or stress hormone takes precedence when you need to cope with the stress. Our body needs the vital hormone to cope with what's going on. So it's as if you're faced with a wild animal. You have to either run or fight it. So in expense of all other hormones, the production of cortisol wins. And so it steals progesterone, and you feel a dip in hormone levels. So often when we see that, your serum level may show normal estrogen, progesterone, but you don't feel it, you're still struggling with these symptoms, I often tell you that, we need to look at cortisol, because it is so important to get that right as well in order to reach that optimal mental health and stress control. Now, any one of us can struggle with mental health or stress during the phase of perimenopause and menopause, but there are some people that are more at risk, and those are people who've had chronic history of mental health problem, those who with a family history of mental health problem, if one has had a history of premenstrual tension or syndrome, any additional conditions like underactive thyroid, or some vitamin deficiencies. And vitamin deficiency could be either as a result of difficulty absorbing it, so if there's a gut problem or malabsorption, or some food restrictions for people who either due to allergies or due to any other mental health problems that they restricting food, that can also result in they're at higher risk of developing mental health problems and stress at menopause. People who have a dependency on alcohol and illicit drug, and those who haven't reached a balance in their work and life. And of course, we all can have bouts of time that you don't feel completely balanced, and one is too involved at work or vice versa. But as long as that's transient and you return back to your balance, that's okay. But it's when it's chronically out of balance that can cause problems with cortisol and stress. And of course, our social connectivity is so important. So menopause health and hormone health and balance is much more than just hormone replacement. HRT or hormone replacement therapy, I've put it there as one, but there are other pillars of hormone balance that really need to be looked at and achieved for one to feel their best, especially when it comes to stress management. Those are, and I'll go into each one in a little bit more detail in the next slides, but they come under the headings of exercise, nutrition, correct supplements, of course, our own personal stress management, and connectivity. Healthy gut is crucial when it comes to hormonal balance, because gut is very active in producing hormones as well as to get rid of excess hormones. So, people who have problems with their gut health may run into difficulty with side effects like excess estrogen side effects, which is bleeding, spotting, or breast tenderness. Healthy gut is really necessary both for producing whatever is left of the hormones during the perimenopause, but also for metabolizing it and processing it out of your system. A good diet when it comes to hormonal balance and health is a Mediterranean diet. So it's nothing unusual. It's the fresh fruit, greens, seeds, dark chocolate, the good fats, the avocados, this is HDL, the high density lipoprotein that protects your heart. Also is, in the previous slide when I was talking about the cascade of hormones, and right at the top before pregnenolone was cholesterol. So all these hormones are derivatives of cholesterol. So it's really important actually for us to take in the good fat because it encourages us to produce the hormone. And exercise, as we know, of course, releases endorphin, which is a happy hormone. But when we start thinking about exercising, we should really be thinking of doing so for our mental and physical health, and not just for weight loss, because this is when you can sort of you can improve your relationship with exercise and daily movement, first of all, and you don't send your cortisol sky high. Because if you do your exercising only for the purpose of weight loss, that actually can be counterproductive for stress management, because it can really increase the cortisol level, which is your stress hormone, with all the impacts that we talked about. And also, if you're restricting these good fats and you're in the perimenopause stage, it will push you into menopause. Now, ways that we can manage, the first one is filling your own cup before that of others. And we're notoriously bad at this. Women generally want to, especially, if we have a family, we're looking after our parents, we have, have been promoted and reached where we wanted to reach in our careers, moving job, moving house, whatever it is that we're dealing with, we tend to put ourselves, the needs and the care last. And really it should be an active sort of actively, we should bring it to the forefront and allow some time for ourselves. Exercises that give us both physical and mental well-being, like yoga, is really helpful. Deep breathing, and for those who especially love nature, being surrounded by nature. Other ways, of course, is remaining connected with your society, with your friends, but also creating the necessary boundaries. Sleep is crucial in helping our cortisol to stay stable and low. When we have chronic insomnia and chronic problem with waking up in the middle of the night, our cortisol is really not in a good place. Our cortisol generally starts at a higher level first thing in the morning. It follows a very smooth decline, and it should be quite low before we're ready to go to bed. So if you're starting with low cortisol first thing in the morning, that's when you feel fatigued, tired, quite sort of, some people feel that, it takes them a while to get going in the day. And that's why I often say you need to check your cortisol and try to correct it. Also, for those who have stressful jobs or stressful social situations in the middle of the day, you can spike cortisol in the day or near bedtime, and that will prevent you from sleeping, and more so actually wakes you up in the middle of the night. I've left names of a couple of free sleep apps just in case you're interested. Supplements, I often get asked a lot about supplements. Some of the ladies I look after, they're sort of very much into their supplements, and it can get out of hand. You'll be taking 10, 20 different things in a day. But really, when it comes to supplements, of course, if you wanted to find out exactly what is needed for in your situation, because everybody's very different, we have to take it into account your previous medical history. Are you on any ongoing prescriptions that can prevent you from absorbing certain nutrients? Do you have inflammatory bowel disease? Any other problems that can prevent you from absorbing from food? So it really is individualized, but very generally, menopausal women should be on activated B vitamins. And by activated B vitamins, I mean vitamins that are easier to absorb. So they have been through processes, or they've had some modifications done on them to make it, like, for example, you may have heard of methylation. So that's a process by which it helps the body to absorb the vitamin quicker. And so these B vitamins are really good, both in cognition and stress management. Vitamin D also has been proved to be very good for feeling happier and preventing. And we always ask, is part of our routine blood profile, because it's really important to make sure that it's optimal. Like majority of the hormones, Vitamin D also has quite a wide range. So just being within the normal range may not be the optimal for you. So it's really important to be optimal with these things. Magnesium, for those either that have a lot of muscle cramps and aches and pains, or those who struggle with sleep, and there are different types of magnesium. And of course, omega-3, the good fat. For those who, these are the things that you can do in your power to help your mental health and stress management, etc. But sometimes we need help from outside professionals to help us achieve that mental health. And that comes in the form of either psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, talk therapy. There are many different ways. Of course, antidepressants, anxiolytics, they have their own place as well. They're not always bad, but if you need that sort of prescription, of course, you need to speak with your healthcare provider. And an HRT for those who have no risk factor for it. So if you're really struggling with mental health problem, with stress, it is worth checking hormone levels if you're perimenopausal, or in cases of postmenopause, you can just try it for a short period of time to see. But as you may know, there are a variety of different types of HRT, and not all of them are all of them are good at controlling things like hot flushes and night sweats and maybe dryness, things like that, but not all are effective when it comes to mental health and stress management. So you have to be on the correct type of HRT. And now, in summary, mental health problems, as I said previously, is very common during perimenopause and postmenopause. And our approach really should be holistic, both pharmacological and non-pharmacological options. There are plenty of options that we can do ourselves in the comfort of our home to achieve that health. And if not, then of course, to get the right help from professionals. And just follow the principles of hormone balance and wellness, those 6-7 pillars of, if you follow those and if you're kind to yourself, I think hopefully you will achieve a good stress management during this phase. Then we've come to the end of my slide presentation. So if you have any questions, or if you want me to go back on any slides, please